¿Sí? ¿Ok? Regresaremos a eso, ¿sí? Entonces es, ¿garantizo empleo, garantizo un mínimo de satisfacción personal o garantizo un mínimo de ingreso? A ustedes se les pueden ocurrir mil cosas. ¿Saben cuál es el problema cada que se les van ocurriendo cosas? Que si yo lo pongo a cargo de ustedes, no necesariamente lo que a ustedes se les ocurre es lo que a mí se me ocurre. ¿Ok? Y entonces quien controla es quien define por qué están ustedes contentos y cómo van a estar contentos. Bien, vamos a ver ahora algo que es interesante y que es el pleito entre Hayek y Keynes desde el punto de vista de este concepto. ¿Okay? Suponiendo que pueda yo encontrar. ¿Cuál era? Ahora, ¿qué pasó aquí? ¿Dónde me perdí? A ver.
Pleasure's all mine.
Your agenda.
That won't be necessary. I am the agenda. Tell them I've arrived. And then tell them I've arrived.
And your name is?
Hayek. F.A. Hayek.
Freddie.
Hey.
Hey, listen, party at the Fed.
Okay. 20 minutes.
Lobby. John Maynard Keynes.
F.A. Hayek.
Yeah, we're opposed.
We oppose each other philosophically.
In the same studio.
We've been going back and forth for a century.
I want to steer markets.
I want them set free. There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it. Play low interest rates.
It's the animal spirit. John Maynard Keynes wrote the book on modern macro. The man you need when the economy's all trash. Depression, recession, now your question's in session. Have a seat and I'll school you in one simple lesson. 1929, the big crash. We didn't bounce back, economy's in the trash. Persistent unemployment, the result of sticky wages. Waiting for recovery, that's outrageous. I had a real plan, any fool can understand. The advice real simple, whose aggregate demand? C-I-G, altogether gets to Y. Keep that total low and watch the economy fly.
We've been going back and forth for a century.
I want to steer markets.
I want them set free. There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it. Play low interest rates.
It's the animal spirit. You see, it's all about spending. Hear the register cha-ching. Circular flow, the dough is everything. So if the flow is getting low, doesn't matter the reason. We need more government spending. Now it's stimulus season, so forget about saving. Get it straight out of your head. Like I said, in the long run, we're all dead. Savings is destruction, that's the paradox of thrift. Don't keep money in your pocket or that growth will never live. Because business is driven by the animal spirits, the bull and the bear. And there's reasons to fear its effects on capital investment, income, and growth. That's why the state should fill the gap with stimulus, both the monetary and the fiscal. They're equally correct. Public works, digging ditches, war has the same effect. Even a broken window hits the glass man. Have some wealth, the multiplier, driving higher the economy's health. And if the central bank's interest rate policy tanks, a liquidity trap, that new money stuck in the banks. Deficits could be the cure you've been looking for. Let the spending soar, now that you know the score. My general theories made quite an impression. Revolution. I transformed the econ profession. You know me, modesty, still I'm taking it back. So say it loud and say it proud, we're all Keynesians now.
We've been going back and forth for a century.
I want to steer markets.
I want them set free. There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it.
I made my case, Freddie H. Listen up, can you hear it?
I'll begin in broad strokes, just like my friend Keynes. His theory conceals the mechanics of change. That simple equation, too much aggregation, ignores human action and motivation. Keynes has a justification for bailouts, payoffs by pools with machinations. Provide them with cover to sell us a free lunch. Then all that we're left with is debt and a bunch. If you're living high on that cheap perspective. We've been going back and forth for a century.
I want to steer markets.
I want them set free. There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it. Play low interest rates.
It's the animal spirit.
The phrase you should study isn't the bust, it's the boom that should make you feel leery. That's the thrust of my theory. The capital structure is key. Malinvestments wreck the economy. The boom gets started with an expansion of credit. The Fed sets rates low. Are you starting to get it? That new money is confused for real loanable funds. But it's just inflation that's driving the ones who invest in new projects like housing construction. The boom plants the seeds for its future destruction. The savings aren't real, consumption's up too. And the grasping for resources reveals it's too few. So the boom turns to bust as the interest rates rise. With the cost of production, price signals relies. The boom was a binge, that's a matter of fact. Now it's devalued capital that makes up the slack. Whether it's the late 20s or 2005, booming bad investment seems like they thrive. You must save to invest, don't use the printing press, or a bus will surely follow, an economy depressed. Your so-called stimulus will make things worse. Just more of the same, more incentives perverse. And that credit crunch ain't a liquidity trap, just a broke banking system. I'm done, that's a wrap. We've been going back and forth for a century.
I want to steer markets.
I want them set free. There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it. Play low interest rates.
It's the animal spirit. The ideas of economists and political philosophers, both when they are right and when they are wrong, are more powerful than is commonly understood. Indeed, the world is ruled by little else. Practical men who believe themselves to be quite exempt from any intellectual influence are usually the slaves of some defunct economist.
The curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about what they imagine they can design.
Bueno, esta es prueba de inglés. ¿Quién la entendió? ¿No? Dura 7 minutos 33 segundos. Durante todo el rap, a mí me pareció que era gracioso, porque a veces las clases son muy aburridas. Pero piensen lo que están diciendo durante todo el rap, ellos dos. Uno dice, mi teoría es una teoría de cómo dirigimos los mercados. Steer the market. Y el otro lo que dice es, no. Set free the market, que esté liberado. Uno habla de cómo el gobierno debería entonces tomar una serie de medidas y que tenemos una liquidity trap. Es un momento en el cual la gente ahorra y en medio de una depresión no gasta, sino que ahorra y ahorra y ahorra. Y entonces caemos en una trampa de liquidez en donde lo que hace falta es que alguien rompa esa trampa de liquidez. Si lo hacemos a través de una serie de medidas económicas como reducción de tasas de interés, como bajar los impuestos, como darle dinero a la gente lo que va a hacer es ahorrar ese dinero porque precisamente está preocupada de lo que está ocurriendo a su alrededor y entonces en lugar de gastar, tiende a ahorrar. Esa trampa de liquidez solamente se va a romper si llega el gobierno y hace el gasto. Y por eso hace la frase de lo que ustedes vieron en clase. Claro, ahí lo dice en inglés. El PIB es igual a consumo más inversión más la balanza de pagos. Y el concepto es, alguien tiene que estimular eso y el que lo tiene que estimular es el gobierno. Y hay un papel para el gobierno que va más allá que simplemente regular el mercado. Es un papel de acción directa, gasto, participación, inversión pública que nos permite crecer. ¿Y cómo lo vamos a hacer? Ten déficits, no te preocupes. De todos modos, las tasas de interés están muy bajas. Entonces el otro le dice, bueno, si sigues haciendo eso, lo que te va a pasar es que vas a ir de boom a bust. Porque lo que te ocurre es que empiezas a gastar en exceso, ese gasto en exceso te lleva a inflación, esa inflación de todos modos te va a levantar las tasas de interés, y lo que te va a pasar entonces es que no va a haber inversiones, y cuando no va a haber inversiones viene la quiebra. Y todo el rap que escucharon ustedes es precisamente las dos teorías. Entre paréntesis, estos dos tipos que, bueno, ellos son actores, pero los dos profesores que pusieron esto y que se han dedicado a eso, que ya crearon su compañía y que les está yendo muy bien, este video tiene más o menos 1.600.000 visitas. ¿Por qué? Pues porque es bien divertido, aparte de que la música está pegajosa. Pero básicamente es el pleito entre lo que hoy estamos platicando de keynesianos contra conservadores liberales, neoclásicos. Y toda la discusión en la canción es eso. Es, yo te digo a ti cómo se debe hacer y tú me dices a mí cómo. Y durante más de 100 años hemos estado discutiendo esto. Y durante más de 100 años, estos dos economistas han sido los economistas que han definido cuál es este juego entre mercado y gobierno en la intervención. Fíjense algo que es importante. Nadie está diciendo aquí que Keynes no es capitalista. Keynes jamás dijo que no era capitalista o que no apoyaba el sistema capitalista. Es más, sus primeras publicaciones son muy distintas. Yo estoy leyendo, entre paréntesis, una biografía de Keynes muy interesante, porque además le sacan todos sus trapitos, pero en el proceso, una de las cosas que van a ver al rato es que Keynes cambia de opinión muchas veces. Y eso hace su posición una posición muy criticable. Pero lo más interesante es que Keynes cambia completamente toda la percepción de cuál debe ser el papel del Estado y cuál debe ser la participación del gobierno, del Estado, para poder sacar a una economía de una crisis. Hayek se opone y los dos son contemporáneos. John Maynard Keynes muere en 1946. Y las aportaciones son muy claras. Lo que él dice es el nivel de actividad económica es fijado por el nivel de la demanda efectiva. Y hay muy pocas razones para pensar que el nivel de demanda efectiva vaya a ser coherente con el pleno empleo. Entre otras de las cosas por las cuales Keynes llega a creer esto, es porque lo que dice es, si ustedes observan a los sindicatos no van a aceptar que haya una disminución de salarios. Porque claro, una solución que se plantea comúnmente es, bueno, lo que tenemos que hacer es un ajuste, haz un ajuste a la baja. Que el mercado ajuste. Y lo que él dice, no, el mercado no ajusta porque lo que pasa es que los sindicatos defienden sus derechos. Ah, pues sí. ¿Cómo se llama en México eso? Vayan a platicar con un líder sindical. Es más, puede que les traiga uno a la clase. ¿Y qué es lo que dice un líder sindical? Las conquistas de la clase trabajadora. Las conquistas. No son los derechos, son las conquistas. Ese es el mío, ese es que no se preocupen. ¿Por qué son las conquistas de las clases trabajadoras? Porque así lo ve un líder sindical. Y de nuevo vamos a entrar al concepto de los intereses de grupo. Entonces Keynes lo que dice es, bueno, esto no va a funcionar así. No va a haber un ajuste vía salarios, no va a haber un ajuste vía precios, no va a haber un ajuste vía la tasa de cambio. Y por lo tanto, el único ajuste que puedo hacer es que el gobierno intervenga para que logramos satisfacer las necesidades de comercio y que esto nos permite que haya una demanda efectiva que genere crecimiento y empleo. Este es el proceso que él habla y este es el proceso en el cual rompe con lo que era importante previamente. ¿Okay? ¿Qué pasa para los años 50? Esto es muy interesante. Mientras Keynes está muriendo, no le hacen mucho caso. Su teoría que sale en 1936 realmente entra en boga cuando termina la Segunda Guerra Mundial. Y lo que tenemos nosotros es una gran cantidad de años, 46 al 80. Estamos hablando de 34 años en que Keynes domina la escena económica mundial. Quienes estudian economía, espero que entren en lo que se conoce como el debate de los Cambridge. Cambridge, Inglaterra contra Cambridge, Massachusetts. Es toda una discusión de la teoría neoclásica contra la teoría de lo que es neomarxismo y keynesianismo. Y son las grandes influencias de los años 50 hasta los años 90, que es todo un proceso de definición, cuál es el papel del gobierno, de dónde procede la riqueza que se genera en una sociedad. Las ideas de Keynes son ideas que transforman, que son aceptadas porque la mayor parte de los países en vías de desarrollo piensan que la única manera en que van a resolver el problema es a través de la intervención. Y entonces déjenme ahora sí presentarles algo serio, ¿sí?, de lo que ocurre con Keynes.
John Maynard Keynes wrote the book on modern macro, the man you need when the economy's on track. See, it's all about spending, hear the register cha-ching.
John Maynard Keynes came from what I call the intellectual upper middle class. That's to say, he came from a Cambridge family. He spent most of his life as a fellow of King's College, Cambridge. And so he always looked down on England from quite a great height of what's called the intellectual bourgeoisie.
You know me, modesty, still I'm taking a bow. So say it loud and say it proud, we're all Keynesians now.
The crucial watershed for him was the First World War. He was drawn into government service, he became a treasury official, and the world had changed irretrievably. And he tried intellectually to come to grips with these things. He became a public figure with his denunciation of the Versailles Treaty, the economic consequences of the peace, in which he said, if we go ahead with this treaty, vengeance will not limp. And that was a bestseller. It was quite controversial because what he attacked very boldly and from a position of knowledge, because he was assumed to know what he was talking about, having been in the Treasury, he attacked the peacemaking of Lloyd George, the Prime Minister. He was scathing about Woodrow Wilson, and his attack on Woodrow Wilson is said to have contributed to the Senate's rejection of American membership of the League of Nations. Then there was the Great Depression, which again dislodged his thought from more orthodox grooves to really revolutionary thinking. And that was the general theory of employment, interest and money, which was published in 1936, written at the bottom of the Great Depression.
Depression, recession, now your question's in session. Have a seat and I'll school you with one simple lesson.
Basic idea was you had employment determined by aggregate demand in the economy, aggregate spending.
C-I-D altogether gets to Y. Keep that total low and watch the economy fly.
And if that fell below the level that was needed to maintain full employment, you had a multiplied downward effect so that you got into another position of rest at a lower level of activity. And there was no obvious reason, unless something turned up, which he thought should be the government, to move back to the higher position from which you had started.
So if the flow is getting low, doesn't matter the reason. We need more government spending. Now it's stimulus season.
So it's the idea you start at full employment, then there's a big disturbance, usually in the financial system.
1929, the big crash. We didn't bounce back, economy's in the trash.
And then the economy runs down to a low level where it remains, basically, unless there's some external impulse or stimulus to lift it to a higher level.
I had a real plan, any fool can understand. The advice real simple, who's aggregate demand?
Now he thought that could come just from new inventions, some technological changes which got people going again, but you couldn't rely on them, so you had to rely on the government.
Because business is driven by the animal spirits, the bull and the bear, and there's reasons to fear its effects on capital investment, income, and growth.
Animal spirits is just his way of expressing the fact that your decisions to invest depend on your feelings about the future, and that these are not calculable in the way that I think economists tended to assume, that somehow you can work out probabilities, calculate the odds, and then your investment decisions are completely rational in that framework. You don't need animal spirits if you know what the odds are. You just need calculating ability. But you need animal spirits when you don't. And then you have these choices. I mean, if you feel very fearful about the future, you hoard money. You just have large cash balances. You wait to see what's going to happen. And money is a form of security. Money has utility. Money is a store of value. And no classical economists really took the store of value function of money seriously until Keynes put it into the center of his picture.
Savings is destruction, that's the paradox of thrift. Don't keep money in your pocket or that growth will never lift.
Keynes regarded saving as just non-consumption. So the paradox of thrift was that if everyone decided to increase their saving because they thought that this was a prudent thing to do, and that's the natural reaction in times of difficulty, to sort of start saving more, you wouldn't get an increase in saving but a reduction in saving, because your act of non-consumption would drag down aggregate spending, and as saving was closely linked to income, as incomes fell, savings fell. And therefore, the attempt by everyone to save more would result in less aggregate saving, because through the decline in income.
See, it's all about spending. Hear the register cha-ching. Circular flow, the dough is everything.
You could say that there was an underlying hostility or an underlying feeling that the tendency to save was stronger than the inducement to invest historically. That people, because the future was so uncertain, it was so subject to so many unpredictable events, that people tended to save money and try and get some security via saving, rather than to embark their money on enterprises. That's why your spending programs have to be aimed at increasing, I think, the consumption of those whose tendency to save is least in the economy, who are more likely to spend a higher proportion of their income. If you give lots of extra spending power to the very wealthy, they'll save quite a large proportion of it, for whatever reason. Look, the problem was a decline in aggregate spending. Total spending was not sufficient to buy the goods that the economy was capable of producing, and therefore a fraction of resources, human resources, capital resources, would be unemployed. Therefore, the government's job was to get spending up. There were two ways of getting spending up. You could either do something to stimulate private investment, and that was on the whole via interest rate policy, or you could spend the money yourself as a government, and that is you enlarge your fiscal deficit, or you run fiscal deficits. He thought that the monetary route was uncertain because it depended on how monetary policy was received. You could lower interest rates to almost zero, but if confidence was low, the banks wouldn't lend to customers, and they would just enlarge their cash balances. You might have required such a low rate of interest that it was unfeasible because there'd be a lower bound, and then you'll get a liquidity trap.
And if the central bank's interest rate policy takes a liquidity trap, that new money stuck in the banks.
What he thought the function of interest rates was, the way he put it, was to equilibrate the demand for cash with the supply of cash, rather than to equalize the demand for investment with the supply of saving. And the reason he thought that was simply that if saving was done not to invest for the purpose of investment, but as a security, in other words, if your act of non-consumption consisted of simply accumulating cash, then that act would not cause a change in interest rates. And therefore interest rate couldn't be regarded as equilibrating saving and investment, because that depended on the picture, that depended on the view that all saving was done for the purpose of investment. If investment was falling off, you lowered the interest rate, and then of course you'd have more investment, and ditto the other way around. But he didn't see this tight connection between saving and investment, which the classical theory assumed to be the case, and therefore the rate of interest was quite different in his system. And that, incidentally, was why he didn't think that lowering interest rates was a reliable mechanism for recovery.
So forget about saving, get it straight out of your head. Like I said, in the long run, we're all dead.
The phrase, "in the long run, we're all dead," I should actually finish that quotation, because I think it's people only remember the first part of it. What he said was, in the long run, we're all dead. Economists set themselves too easy, too useless a task if all they can tell us once the storm is long past that the sea is flat again. So that's the full quotation. The context is the quantity theory of money. He's attacking quantity theory of money as a short-run theory. He's saying, yes, in the long run, prices rise proportionately to the increase in the money supply, but in the short run, they don't. In the short run, there are output effects. And so that was his homage to the quantity theory of money, but he kicked it into the long run.
Persistent unemployment, the result of sticky wages.
Keynesians, when they were trying to make sense of the general theory and what its central message was, used to say that the reason economies don't bounce back immediately from some disturbance is because of sticky wages and prices. They actually said rigid wages and prices. They don't move, and therefore output has to move. That's not in the general theory. Keynes never talked about sticky prices. They used sticky prices, they stuck it on to their idea of what Keynes was about because they couldn't explain how output could fall if wages and prices were perfectly flexible. The fact is, of course, that they weren't perfectly flexible, but they are flexible in the general theory. Only output is the stronger impulse. And the reason Keynes said that wages and prices don't do the job is because of uncertainty. People don't know what the new equilibrium wage is. You're in a disequilibrium situation at that moment. And that is why, although prices and wages do have some adjustment, they don't adjust fast enough. And so output falls speedier than wage and price adjustments. That was, I think, the core of his theory. And so it's correct to say that that prices are sticky and they're not rigid.
Waiting for recovery? That's outrageous.
Basically, if you wanted a surefire method of getting the economy rapidly back to something like full employment, it's the government that had to spend. Fiscal policy. Now, there are also, I should have said, there are two ways of conducting fiscal policy as well. You could either cut taxes, and that would be one way of enlarging the deficit, or you could increase spending yourself as a government, or you could just increase spending and raise, and you could have a balanced budget as well, but it'd just be a larger share of the national income. So there were different types of fiscal policy, but on the whole, I think he thought that the government should spend the money itself.
Deficits could be the cure you've been looking for. Let the spending soar now that you know the score.
There's always going to be waste in any programs, any government programs. You've got to, and people get worried about waste, but you've got to balance the waste that is necessarily involved in any government stimulus programs against the waste that is involved with allowing unemployment to rise and reach such high levels. The private sector is enormously wasteful, actually. Only a lot of this waste is covered up, but it's very, very wasteful insofar as it produces slumps. Now, if it's efficient, there are no big fluctuations such as we've experienced. An efficient market system does not produce that if it satisfies the normal efficiency requirements. So the argument is, well, this wasn't really a proper market because it was already so interfered with, it was bound to sort of malfunction. But one can argue about that. But having said that, you still have these two things to compare: government waste, which is inevitable, against the waste of human resources, of mass unemployment of a very high level. And I would say, okay, you just put up with some government waste. It's a fact of life. Governments aren't perfect. They make mistakes. They have lots of ill-designed programs. but I would still take that rather than live with 10% unemployed for 5 years.
My general theories made quite an impression. Revolution. I transformed the econ for better. You know me, modesty, still I'm taking it back. So say it loud and say it proud, we're all Keynesians now.
Bien, ahí vamos a empezar la próxima clase.